Hi there, it's Carl Irwin, the Common Magician, and I am back. And this is a little bit more of a cleanup in aisle 6, as they say, to the last video. So I posted a final video from vacation where I discussed a number of different issues. One of them was the name of the video was Busted, and one of the topics I talked about was getting caught and what can you do when getting caught. And I posited a suggestion, just a piece of advice. You don't have to do this at all, but the piece of advice that I suggest is that when you get caught, it may be best to just admit that you got caught. You could even take an opportunity to discuss what you got caught on, right? And have share some appreciation in the method that's going on. And I know some people out there would hear me say that, and it depends on what your perspective is. If you're from a magic is a brotherhood, secret society, mysteries are under lock and key kind of background or kind of following in magic, you would really despise my suggestion. However, I don't want to be snotty. I really don't. But I do believe that the perspective I hold is a little more realistic in that magic as a form doesn't belong to anybody. The people that claim magic as their own thing are actually claiming possession of something they don't own, right? Deception is really what we're talking about. Deception is not owned by anybody. And deception as entertainment, as theater, magic is theater, is really what it is. It's a form of theater. It's a form of acting of some kind. And I don't want to get into these descriptions of magic as, as a magician is an actor playing a part of a magician. I mean, there's those old sayings. I don't want to get into that philosophy. It's just that magic is a form of theater. It's a type of theater. It's a type of interactive theater, I think. And it's built on deception and it's built on wonder. Those of you that view it as a sort of a society or a mentorship sort of structure really would not like what I have to say. I disagree with you. I just disagree with you. I think as I was making the point in my original talk about what I think magic is to people, most people, I'll say Western people. I mean, the Western culture, at least contemporary Western culture specifically, because Victorian Western culture was very different than contemporary Western culture when it comes to how they perceive magic. I mean, that's a whole other issue. My point was that contemporary culture, Western culture in particular, views magic really as a subgroup of puzzle. And I don't... American philosopher Dallas Willard is once quoted as saying in a lecture that he gave, a friend of mine who saw him lecture told me about this. I used to like to say when I was discussing things that were complex with people, my friends or whatever, when we're debating, I would often say that I'd like to say that humans have a particular flaw that is you cannot get around. We are only capable of saying one thing at a time. We cannot, as much as we try, we cannot say everything all at one time. You can only say one thing at a time. And this is very vital for an argument because most arguments continue because someone can only say one thing at a time. And it allows the opponent to interject on elements that have gone unsaid before they've been said or have been left out. That's how I used to put it. We can only say one thing at a time, so bear with me. But my friend told me about this quote he heard from Willard. He started his lecture by saying, I don't have the time or the energy to explain everything that I don't mean by what I say. Right? And if you start every argument that way, I think you really cut the the opponent off at the knees, because that's really what most arguments go on and most misunderstandings go on, because of a misinterpretation. And sometimes it's by mistake. Sometimes it's by mistake but believed and taken advantage of. Other times it's done on purpose. I wouldn't classify any, misunderstanding here as being any one of those things. But there is a misunderstanding. If you go back and look at what I said on the previous discussion, it should become clear. I did not misspeak, and I did say everything that I needed to say to be clear. However, I will say that in the comment section, more than one person, at least two people, gave the same incorrect interpretation of what I said. So therefore, I have to conclude that I was not clear enough. I tend to be very redundant in the things that I say. However, I did note that this point that I made, I was not redundant with. I explained it one time. The point was this: I said that I perceive as Western culture, I'll add that to it, but this is what I was getting at. I perceive magical effects to be much more related to puzzles than to magic, as I called it, a Santa Claus magic, right? A miraculous working. Now, I would say Victorian era culture viewed that quite differently, the snake oil sales kind of culture. And by the way, there's still plenty of that going on. There's still a lot of different kinds of groups that still do magic. They don't call it that, though. They claim it to be real. And they have a following that believes it. But in the Victorian era, there's a lot more of that going on, I think, than there is now. I think the vast majority, so vast, I would say 100%, 99.9999999% of people that go to see a magic act or see a performer perform magic, they understand fully, completely, absolutely, in every way that matters, that it is a trick, that there is an explanation to it. And what they get out of it is the wonder of not understanding the explanation, of having no explanation available to them. As we say, all the doors are shut and there is no way to explain what happened. What they have seen is either impossible or highly improbable, such that they cannot explain it. And it's that sensation of wonder that is the magic. But it doesn't change the fact that it is really well understood as what it is. It's a trick, right? They're being fooled in the moment. That's why the common response is, how did you do that? Now I'll get to those people here in a second, kind of the more typical spectator. What was misinterpreted is some of you, like one of the things that was said in the comments was, I was characterized as saying that magic is best presented as a puzzle to be busted. I never said that. I did not say that at all. Not at all. You go back and watch it. The video's there. You check it out. I never said that. I never said that magic is best presented as a puzzle to be busted. I didn't even suggest any such thing. Another quote was, I'm not mad about this. In fact, I thank you for your comment. So, always be willing to speak your mind and at least try to verify what you think I'm saying, because it gives me an opportunity to make another video, and I'm happy to do this. So it's fine. But I do want to clear it up. Another comment that was made, and two people said kind of the same thing, was this approach that can you guess what I'm up to? Right? The can you guess what I'm up to approach? See if you can figure out what I'm doing. That is not what I was suggesting at all. What I said very early in that video is I established my worldview of magic, which I think fits 100% of people. That magic really is a puzzle. It's related to a puzzle. It's not really about the miraculous. Not at all. People don't really present in that way anyway. And even when we do present in that way, it is presented in that way without emphasis. You just do the thing that you do without making any sort of claim of cause. That's generally how magic is presented in today's culture, right? But it's understood as a puzzle. And what I said was I nuanced where you get gratification from puzzles. When you complete a puzzle, at that moment when you figure it out, when you discover what the solution is, that is where you get the gratification in completing a puzzle. And I said in my comments, please go check it out. I said magic is a little different. It's conversely different. Whereas with a magical effect, you get gratification from getting to the end in the revelation and getting close to understanding it, and yet you don't know. And it's the wonder that gives you the gratification. That magic as a puzzle is different from puzzles as we know them. That is what I said. So if you missed that moment, don't take my word for it. Go back and check it out. But that was the train of thought that I went on. So no, I've not suggested any such thing that one should ever present a trick as saying, see if you can catch me out. I've never said that. By the way, there is a type of magic that fits that to the letter. I'll talk about in a moment. But I would not say that all magic should be that. One type of magic absolutely is that all the time. And if it isn't that, then it can't be what it is. Again, I'll get to that in a minute. But I didn't suggest that. In fact, you've never seen me give any presentation like that. I've never ever suggested, I'm going to show you something. I mean, apart from my Guess the Method series I did a couple years ago, where I did a few of these for those of you out there, see if you can figure out what it is for magicians. But that's not what I present. I usually say I want to show you something interesting. Interesting is a word I like to use. If I had a nickel for every time I heard Michael Amar say mystery, I'd have a lot of nickels, right? That's another tactic that is non-committal with respect to cause, but certainly indulges the concept of a puzzle. That there is something at work here, but it remains unknown. It is a mystery. There is no indication of a cause or no claim to cause. It is a mystery. It is a puzzle. It is left to your brain to process and come up short. Ultimately, that's the idea with magic, is to present something such that you don't have an answer. That doesn't change the fact that you get busted, which was what we were talking about, right? Is it sometimes you feel that you've shut all the doors and ultimately there has to be a door open. And as I said, sometimes someone can catch that door. And I just think it's better in those situations when the door is caught open to acknowledge that the door is open and at least have that interaction with people. I'm not talking about going out doing tricks and then showing everybody how tricks are done and having some enjoyment from that. That's not fun at all. Now here's why that's not fun. The vast majority of all of those people who fully know well that what you're doing is a trick, a puzzle of some sort, they don't want to know how it's done. And it's not that they don't want to know how it's done. They don't care to know how it's done. They want to be entertained. They won't be upset. It's not like spoiling the end of a movie, right? I don't think it's like that. There are people like that say, "Oh, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't want to." I think they do. I mean, people don't want to. Wonder is an interesting feeling, isn't it? It's kind of a joyful feeling, but it lacks satisfaction. Being in wonder is an unsatisfied gratification. It's an interesting dynamic. I think that's why it's unique, right? To feel the sense of wonder. It doesn't mean that they don't want to know, though. They do want to know. That's why they say, as I said, how did you do that? That's the question. It doesn't mean they're entitled to know, at least in the moment of performance. Now, if they really want to know and they want to go check it out and they want to figure it out and they want to sort it out and they want to check the writings or they want to find the videos or they want to buy the product, they're absolutely as entitled to know as anybody else. And no less or no more entitled than you or me to find out and not perform it. Just to know. Why does someone have to be lied to and be stuck in that situation. I mean, anybody's entitled to know anything, and it doesn't hurt magic. It's absurd. You can't hurt magic. You can hurt magic businesses, you can hurt magic creators by exposing things, right? So that those products are not purchased. But you can't really hurt magic. I mean, as an example, someone says, "Oh, you can go find a tutorial on the double lift, and it just destroys all kinds of magic that can be done." That's just ridiculous. My uncle, who's also an amateur magician, a lifelong amateur magician, tells me that when he lived in New Hampshire years ago, he would go to a restaurant where there was a magician that worked hop tables there, and he would take his friends there, family, friends, and acquaintances, often to go see him as much as they could. And he took his son, my cousin, and who knew some things about some magic because of his father, and he called out a double lift, right, in, I don't know, Ambitious Card or something like that. And my uncle said it was hilarious because after he pointed that out, the magician, the performer, kept landing double lifts on him over and over and over and over again that he did not see. Okay? Just because you know something doesn't mean that it is no longer applicable. Just because someone is able to learn some kind of secret, all it does is it confirms what they already knew, in that there is a method, but it doesn't destroy magic. I mean, it just doesn't do that. It might mean that they know something, they know an element of magic, but it doesn't ruin it. And such people are not a threat at all. I mean, they're not a threat at all to anybody. It's an absurdity. The fact of the matter is, I think it was Jim Steinmeier. I don't remember, but I think it was him. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure somebody will. But I think it was him who had a quote about all of the secrets of magic being locked up in a safe that is actually empty, right? That really, there's no secrets anywhere. There's part of this mystique, I know, like at the Magic Castle, they have the library and only members have access, and it's all, all very mysterious and everything. But the fact of the matter is, I would bet that there's hardly anything in that library that isn't known to the public. I mean, that isn't widely available anywhere. Now, there's probably specific writings by specific people on specific subjects that you're going to find in there, nice, neatly put together. There's probably some very rare texts that you might find in there that are best kept in that library, and some nuanced secrets that are unique and haven't been presented. But in general, I think the principles are all widely known. I mean, if they're not necessarily widely known because they've been let out, they're widely known because humans trick each other. I mean, count the number of ways that one can lie, and there you have all of the methods of magic. Pretty much it, and all new applications for old ideas are coming up every day. It's called con artistry. It's criminality. That's what it is. Now let me get back to this whole idea about that comment. Magic is best presented as a puzzle to be busted. That's not what I was saying, but I do want to point something out to all of you that were in that camp and despise that idea. You must hate card control routines. You must hate gambling routines. You must, because that is the essence of a gambling routine. That's all of it, right? How many of you love watching Jason Ladani's videos? Okay, I think we all do, but that's entirely the shtick. That's all of it, right? It's magic best presented as a puzzle to be busted. That's exactly what that kind of magic is, whether it's overtly stated or not. Even to the point where some of those magicians do not want to be called magicians. They want to be called something else, card mechanics or whatever. They have other names for it because they don't really want it to be perceived as magic. They actually want it to be perceived as control, as a puzzle that's presented to be busted, and the spectator comes up with nothing. That's the goal, right? See if you can catch me out, and you can't catch me out. That is the goal of that particular type of magic. And it's not that different from any other type of magic. I mean, I think there's a little bit of that in everything. So I just want to point out, even though I wasn't saying that actually does exist. And it's actually a lot of magic. In fact, many of you that love card sleights, you really love to do sleights, and you love table sleights and hand sleights, and you love to do the knuckle busting stuff. That is exactly the kind of magic that you're doing when you do those things, because you're really being bold. I mean, it's a boldness of sleight of hand in the open, and not being seen, not being caught out. That's just part of it. Even if you're not doing a gambling routine, there's a major element to that. So, one last thing on this. And that is to go back to the discussion of the Victorian era and the way people perceived magic at that time, and the spiritualists and all that kind of stuff. And then coming to today, there's still a little bit of that going on out there. The Miss Chloe hotline garbage that's out there, and the faith healers and these people that are largely crooks taking advantage of people. I don't think we need to talk too much about that. We all understand it. There's a little bit of that going on out there. There's even there's a very small, I think, following that still extends from the 70s and 80s, right? The Uri Geller kind of sort of mentalism, but there's not a lot of that even much anymore. It's a lot of that has been widely eradicated, or just I don't know, people have ignored it. It kind of fell out. But it's been replaced by something else, right? If I say words like subliminal suggestion, hypnotic suggestion, body language micro-expression analysis, right? Neuro-linguistic programming, right? These phrases that have become the new spiritualism. And I say they're the new spiritualism because they have replaced that cause as the element to be believed in a mentalism act. Now, a lot of, ethically minded mentalists will say, well, I don't subscribe to any of that sort of stuff. I hear you say that, but at the same time, just like a lot of people that do the spiritualist kinds of things, even today, they will talk in a narrative about ghostly things happening and spiritual things happening and haunted things, right? And forces acting, and without making a claim to it, they will talk in a narrative sense about that and then do the effect, knowing full well that the audience doesn't buy the narrative, but they indulge in the narrative as part of the theater of what's going on. I think that's the true dynamic of that kind of magic. But again, it comes down to a puzzle that can be explained. You're just left without explanation, and that's the whole point. You replace that cause with these other things which are as ridiculous, right? But they have one difference. They pseudologically seem real. They're almost believable. Many of them are, right? You can have someone like Darren Brown do his act where he would say, I've never said that I use neuro-linguistic programming or subliminal suggestion. I've never claimed to use these things. But he does the same thing, right? What magicians do, part of the theater, is that he talks about these subjects and then does these feats. And it's left for the audience member to make the association and be left in wonder. And the difference is that these things have a pseudological explanation or pseudoscience explanation to them, where one would almost believe that one is using body language micro-expression analysis to determine someone's thoughts and feelings. right? That's part of it. So that's kind of the new cause that's been put out there, and it's almost more deceptive. It's almost a bigger lie because it seems like it could be true because it's rooted in something that is tangible and perhaps has an explanation to it, even if the explanation is highbrow and not understood or out of reach for the normal person to grasp or repeat. I know there's going to be people out there that say, well, hypnosis is a real thing. It is a real thing, but it's not a real thing as it looks in stage magic, as it is in psychological practice, right? In mental health practice. It's a very different kind of thing. And where they rub together is somewhat minimal, right? In the Magic Act, in the Mentalism Act, hypnosis is presented as being something that it isn't. In the sense of the dual reality that is there, right? Without getting too much into that. And I'm not a performing hypnotist. It's not something I do. I'm not a mentalist. I don't do that kind of stuff. But I've read the books that you've all read. I understand what it is, and you know what it is too, and you know what it isn't. So just a little bit more on that. So just to recap, what I said was that magic is like a puzzle. It's very much related to puzzles. As puzzles, we find gratification in the finding of a solution. Magic is a different kind of puzzle where we find gratification left without the solution, rubbing up close to it, but not having it and being left in wonder. And then the extension of that discussion is that some people do get a gratification out of figuring out the trick or finding the trick and looking up the trick to see it. Let me describe who is in this camp of people who magicians feel are just such bad, terrible, unethical people who would go and idly look up a trick just to learn what it is. I'll tell you who's in that camp. Magicians are in that camp. You're talking about yourself. Look in the mirror. That's you. That's you and me. We want to know, and we go look it up, and we look up all kinds of things. We buy all kind. This might be part of what Ramsey was getting at too. I think this was an element to it, is the sales aspect of magic, and what it does. We buy magic that we never perform. We buy books full of effects that we read about and appreciate and understand and comprehend, but never actually do. We buy effects and we look at it and we find out the method and we say, this is what I thought it was, or, oh, that's not what I thought it was. And we say, well, we stick it in the drawer, and we never perform it. We just see it, right? And we just get the gratification from, I guess I know what that is now. And that's it. We buy subscriptions to periodicals and we read magic secrets cover to cover and never do it. We just want to know how it works and talk shop with other magicians. Some of these other folks that are just as interested but are not part of a dialogue or a discourse like maybe you or me, they're no different than you and me in that respect. Not at all. And I think it's a fool's errand to try to differentiate those people, by saying, well, they just never do any magic, but at least we do a little bit. Look, people are entitled to know the truth to every lie. There's no lie out there that people aren't entitled to know the truth to, and it is not a big deal when you get busted. It is not a big deal. Don't try to hide it. That's my piece of advice. You don't have to take it, but it is a piece of advice. Don't try to hide those moments. Engage in those moments. And I'm not saying those moments should be frequent. I didn't say that at all. In that same video that I talked about, what did I harp about? I actually harped about the fact that you could have an organized stacked deck that doesn't have to be as random looking as many people think. And the problem with magicians is that they're giving people too much of a view on it. That does not sound like a person who's talking about giving away magic secrets. I'm telling you to do the opposite. I'm saying don't show them so much, right? No, you shouldn't be handing out a deck of cards that is stacked. If you're using a stacked deck, particularly a cyclical one that has a pattern to it that could be noted after some amount of viewing and a little bit of analysis, don't give some amount of viewing and a little bit of analysis. It's not warranted anyway. You should never do that. That's not part of presenting a trick. And if you need to break up the stack after the conclusion of the trick, then you should do that in order to make the effect land and keep its value and keep its weight. But if you get busted, don't worry about it. Talk about it. Share. It's okay. You won't hurt magic. You won't destroy magic. Magic will still be around tomorrow and 100 years from now. You know, people will be finding all kinds of new ways to lie for fun, for the enjoyment and entertainment of spectators. So that's why I don't get too worked up about exposure on YouTube and all that kind of thing either. And you know, is there a difference between me and a teaching channel where I teach stuff and someone who exposes? I mean, the one difference is that I try to be very careful about not exposing other people's marketed material because I respect that aspect, the business aspect of it. I think that's the one way you can hurt, not magic, but you hurt people, right, when you do that. Maybe that's the difference, but otherwise someone who exposes a trick there and someone who teaches it, it's really exposure either way you look at it, and neither way hurts magic. It just does not. It's an absurdity to think in that way. It's a non sequitur. The two things do not really, one does not lead to the other. We've not, like I said, I don't think anything is new written under the sun on the subject. You're really just talking about using the same general methods to lie in new and inventive presentational ways. It hasn't hurt the activity up until now, and it won't into the future. If anything, it does the opposite. It actually increases the intrigue and brings more people into it. People like you and me who just want to know, how does it work? So we can do it or not do it. And in most cases, we don't. In most cases, we learn many things that we just never put into practice, and we put in a small amount. So anyway, that's just a little bit more talking about this. You shouldn't be so shocked by what I say, because I'm not saying anything shocking. Not at all. Not at all. I'm trying to be real and level. And I'm trying not to indulge in conclusions that don't have logical basis to them. I'm trying to be the other way. I'm trying to be real, level, encourage you to do more, encourage you to not worry about things that aren't worth worrying about, like getting busted. It's not worth it, right? And trying to give you a strategy for dealing with those moments. And also talking real about how people look at what we do. The vast majority of people, again, are not interested in actually finding out how it's done. They're perfectly content to see it and be in wonder. And some people do want to know how it's done. And there's nothing wrong with those people. Some of them will be very aggressive about finding out how it's done, and they'll go find out how it's done. And there's nothing wrong with those people either, even if they never actually do a trick themselves, ever. Because they're entitled to it. So what? My skin's a lot thicker than that. I don't have to worry about doing card tricks. One thing can be fun is to show a trick, teach a trick to somebody. Teach a trick that is often taught. Teach a trick that's often taught. Try this, okay? Show and make this part of the presentation. Show someone the key card trick. Do the trick and then explain. So the way I did this was I used a key card. I actually knew the bottom of the bottom card first, and then that way, whenever you replaced your card into the deck, and we cut it, and I had you cut it, I actually knew your card because I knew the adjacent card, so that I was able to find it, right? And then do the trick again and say, now, of course, this couldn't work if I don't know what the bottom card is, right? Shuffle the deck, and then do the trick again and be successful at it. Using the same key card that you used before, just milking it off. Right? That's why magic can't be hurt. Because knowing any particular method, or even knowing a series of methods, doesn't cover all the bases. It just doesn't. It's not possible, right? You can't know every way to lie. Just can't. So take it easy. I'm not saying anything outlandish and crazy, and certainly nothing offensive about magic. I love magic, and I love performing magic, and I don't perceive magic as some game of wits. I see it as the opposite. I think that there is a tendency for some spectators to have come to a point where they view it as a game of wits, and a lot of that has to do with magicians doing magic badly. Magicians being cocky and arrogant and obnoxious and presenting in such ways that they act like, I know something that you don't know, and then they do their tricks, and it's that sentiment has rubbed off on people, and that is why they approach magic as a me versus you kind of situation. So we ought to be presenting better than that. We ought to be presenting as, let me show you something fascinating and interesting. And I'm on your side. I'm on your side in this. And if I show you something fascinating and interesting, and you're angry about the fact that you don't know what's going on, I'd be happy to tell you how it works, because that's not what this is about, right? Actually, there's a Nate Staniforth wrote a book. What was it? This is Real Magic or something, or I read it back when it came out. I haven't read it since. But he tells a story of an evening where he was doing a show, and a woman in the audience accused him of doing spiritual things that he should not be doing, right? She had this idea that there was some kind of a demonic element to what he was doing. And he saw her outside of the show, and he actually said, he counted in the book, he said, ma'am, this is not that at all. In fact, I'll show you how I do everything, because I don't want you to walk away thinking that. That is what I'm saying, right? It is okay for people to know how magic works and not be magicians. And that's why, not that you should go find those people and go, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that's why it's okay to be busted, and nobody should ever worry about getting busted. And if you get busted, you shouldn't try to cover your skin. You shouldn't try to turn tail. You should just accept it and enjoy the moment, because it's okay and it can actually be kind of fun. That's it. Okay. Good luck with that. Flame me again, I don't know, whatever. But good luck with that. Happy magicking.